Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. I want to welcome the candidates tonight who are here to undergo your grilling. And I thank all of you for coming out to hear them. I'll apologize to begin with because we won't be able to get to all of your questions. And for that, I'm sorry. We have a number of candidates. We will start at this end and go that way and hope that we will have a chance for it. We won't really, but some of you will be able to answer a question first, but because of time constraints, we won't be able to get through all of them. And we will begin this end with Mr. Hudspeth. Do you support an ethics ordinance for Denton? And if so, why or why not? Yes. Make sure the green light is on your microphone. That's when we can hear you. And the timekeeper is here. She'll hold up a card that's yellow when you have 30 seconds left and red when it's time to stop. And we ask that you stop promptly upon the red card being turned. Okay. Mr. Hudspeth, do you support an ethics ordinance for Denton? And if so, why or why not?
Yes, I do support a strong ethics ordinance for the council, and I think that's a key component of one of my goals is to begin to earn the citizens' trust again for the council and instill a new level of transparency. And that ethics ordinance is key to being successful in that regard. There's others in this particular race for District 1 that would tell you that there's not a need for an ethics ordinance, and I would respectfully disagree. Again, I'll start with, my name's Gerard Hudspeth. I'm running for District 1. I would like your support. District 1 is this downtown area and southeast Denton area. So thank you very much.
Mrs. Hawes.
Hi, my name is Fran Hawes, and I'm also running for District 1. I believe it's necessary as long as it doesn't border on discriminatory practices. You can put all kinds of clauses on things that seem ethical, but they're morally bankrupt because they're devoid of the real action that you're trying to take. So, like I said, my answer is yes on ethics. Again, as long as it doesn't become discriminatory in practice.
Mrs. White.
Hello, my name is Emily White. I'm running for City Council District 1. I do support an ethics ordinance for the city of Denton. One of the reasons that I think Denton is a leader is Denton is known for being pioneers for transparency. I have noticed if there's an event or incident, something that happens elsewhere, Denton will say, hey, let's get body cameras. There will be an incident in another part of the world and Denton will say, hey, let's get dashboard cameras. I think that Denton are leaders in showing transparency to with our police, with our fire, and with our city council. I find our city council esteemed. I think our city workers do a great job, and I think that we should support a city ordinance as leaders here in Denton.
Mr. Cole.
I'm Jason Cole. I'm running for District 3. And yes, I do support an ethics law because I believe that government's best when the lights are on, and transparency builds trust. And there seems to be a loss of trust lately, and it needs to be built again. And so, yes, I do support an ethics law.
And Mr. Duff.
Okay, I'm a little more than supporting it. There is a charter committee right now of 21 people, 3 from each of the present city council members. And one of the jobs they're doing is coming up with an ethics ordinance. I got a chance to address them, and I basically told them, you really need to get this done, get it to the city council, either put it on the ballot or pass it, because if you do not, there will be a petition. I know how to do petitions.
Mr. Meltzer.
Hi, Paul Meltzer. I'm running for District 3. The important thing is the establishment of trust. That's conflict of interest and the appearance of conflict of interest, and that's regarding council as well as staff. So I think that is very basic, and I do think that that could be addressed in an ordinance prior to the Charter Commission. So I see no obstacle to action now. There's also a provision in the Texas Open Meeting Acts that allows for an electronic bulletin board where citizens can see interactions between council and staff. And the law provides for that, and I think our citizens would appreciate being able to see that and see what's going on. I'd also add that I have no ties to any businesses that or industries that would be bringing business before the council, and you can feel confident that I'll be there to represent your interests, not special interests.
Ms. White. I'm sorry, Mrs. Service.
Hi, Amanda Service, District 4 candidate. I absolutely endorse an ethics ordinance, also a city manager, also a city auditor, and I also support a ethics committee to make sure that the ethics ordinance is being followed. Thank you.
And Mr. Ryan.
Thank you. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for having this tonight and all of y'all for coming out. And yes, I definitely support an ethics ordinance. It was looked at about a year ago or so, maybe two, and in our charter, and this is the actual change to the charter, the charter committee is not coming up with an ethics ordinance. They are changing our charter to where an ethics ordinance could have some teeth. Our charter currently says that we shall follow state law, state ethics. And so based on that, if we passed one, if it ever went to a court decision, the judge would throw it out because you're following, the charter supersedes your ordinance, and therefore, until we change that charter, so I encourage everyone to get out and vote in November again, any ordinance that we pass will not have the teeth, because right now we shall follow the state. We just need that change to may follow or may follow.
All right, this time we will begin with Mrs. Hawes. How do you feel about grants or other incentives that benefit the downtown historic core of Denton?
I'm all for it. I mean, downtown is part of our district, which inhabits all 4 levels of government. And I find that if we incorporate all 4 of those levels of government, city, state, county, and federal, in order to preserve the historic nature of the city of Denton, I think that would take a lot of stress off of the residents. It would relieve our tax burden somewhat, to where the other problems that are coming out, just as an example, this free tax freeze, incorporating all of the levels of government available would relieve that tax burden and maintain our historic funding.
Thank you. Mrs. White.
I think grant programs for downtown would be a great idea. I think that we spend a lot of money on the square, but if we extend the idea of downtown to include from University to Eagle, from Carroll to Bell, and maybe even some areas into Southeast Denton, I would like to see some mural projects completed and preserving our Quakertown heritage, as well as our historic neighborhoods in the square proper.
And Mr. Cole.
Yes, I support downtown grants, but along with Ms. White, I would expand it to include a greater area, because the downtown area is just getting so expensive to do business. The mom and pops are getting forced out, and you better be a millionaire if you're going to put in anything down there because it's so expensive. We do need these grants, but I would expand it to a greater area. So if a business on University wanted one, that they could get it.
Mr. Duff.
Yeah, well, I would probably support grants, but I think we need to be very careful and make sure what the payback for the city is before we start throwing money around. We have a really great historical area, and we need to maintain that. I know some of the things like SROs, if you know what that is, some of those I'm really not going to support if it's going to destroy a neighborhood and destroy people's home values.
Mr. Melcher.
I think grant programs are best when they're targeted behind a very solid strategy, and the downtown project has been incredibly successful. I'm sure many of us remember when it was really quiet downtown, and it's become a really vibrant center. I think there's some left to do. I support the grant for the former Carroll's Upholstery building where they're actually going to be restoring the historic appearance of it. But I do think that now we can start thinking about other areas, not just being broader, but trying to be strategic, developing other areas that could have a sense of place and could be other places for people to gather. More can be done in the Fry Street area. There's talk about Bolivar Arts District, so that would be welcoming to the sort of mom and pop retail that is kind of disappearing from the square, and I'd love to see something done on historic Prairie Street as well.
All right. Mrs. Service.
Yes, I think the square is very successful, but I think that there are other parts of Denton that need some love. I was driving through Southeast Denton the other day, and I had talks with some of the citizens that their bathrooms are locked after 6:30, and I'm very, very blessed to be running in District 4 because in Eureka we have heated bathrooms that stay open pretty much all day. And so I think that if we're going to be giving tax incentives or working on the square, Southeast Denton, other parts that need some more keeping up and beauty so that their aesthetic matches the rest of Denton, I'm for that as well. Thank you.
Mr. Ryan.
The grant program for downtown has been in place for a number of years, and I believe we actually went through a year where nobody even filed to get the grant money, and that's when you have to question how useful it is anymore, but I would continue to support it in the future. The grants are for exterior, up to 25% of what you pay for exterior upgrades to bring it back to the historic nature of the building.
Mr. Hudspeth.
I would be in favor of the grants continuing, but I would like to tie a matrix to them so that we can quantify the benefits. And also it goes back to transparency, being able to justify why we made a decision. And you look at a city council meeting just Tuesday where they ended up splitting and having a hard decision in front of them on how to allocate those funds. I think when you have a means of measuring, you can then make those decisions easier and more predictable, which benefits those that are going to be requesting the funds. They know exactly what the targeted goal is. So it goes to transparency and being measured and proactive in your planning so that people are aware of expectations in advance. Thank you.
Mrs. White. As our city and county continue to grow, how will you support current and ongoing initiatives to prevent and end homelessness and ensure that Denton remains affordable for all residents?
This is an issue that I've actually been working on with Pat Smith of Serve Denton. If you are familiar, Pat Smith has been heading up the Shiloh Village project, which is a District 1 centric issue. It is an affordable house village proposal that has been slated near Audra. Depending on who you ask, there may be either 23 or 24 homeless veterans here in Denton. And thank goodness we had the Veterans Center open yesterday on Carroll. But our veterans in this town need our help. The Shiloh Tiny House Village is $1.2 million. Over $400,000 has already been raised, so only $700,000 could be crowdsourced, could be raised for this project to come into fruition. I would like to see the Tiny House Village project, headed up by Pat Smith, come into fruition, and I would like to see it serve as a model to help between the 30 to 40 civilian homeless persons that we currently have in our community. We know that we've seen.
Mr. Cole.
I support the homeless initiative. I think it's on the right track, and one reason I really like it is the public-private partnership of it, and especially the private part of it. I would ensure that the funding mechanisms as the community block grants would continue, but if money gets tight, some decisions will have to be made. And, I'm not for increasing fees or taxes to, increase the funding for this, but I like the private partnership of it, and I think it should continue, and we should still continue to help those agencies.
Mr. Duff.
Well, the city council, obviously is going to have the final say on any programs, including the homeless. And of course, the budget gets pretty complicated. But the homeless can't be a government-only solution. It needs to be a joint venture between nonprofits, like the Serve Denton, Monsignor King Shelter, Salvation Army, along with volunteers from the community and the support from the city council. I noticed the mayor said that there was some federal funding for veterans that they got a grant. I think it was for 10 homeless veterans, and that's something else that I know that he's going to pursue, and it's something else we need to pursue.
Mr. Meltzer.
I think one of the best accomplishments in this past year with the focus on homelessness in the city was the organization of the Coalition for Homelessness that's county-wide. It's one of those kind of issues where if you just solve it in one locale, you can actually make your problem worse. And I think there's an opportunity for Denton to lead in the case management aspect, where clients are willing to have visibility from all those organizations into cases so that we know that efforts are not being duplicated and that it's evident when someone is not being served in the system properly as well. More importantly, there is an element of the homeless population that is currently being paid for out of public funds, but it's because we don't do anything consciously. We allow people to live on the streets and end up in emergency vehicles and taking round trips through jail. It's very expensive. And if we take a supportive housing first approach, we'll save money.
Ms. Service.
I absolutely agree with Paul. Also, I think that the homeless problem needs to be a community spread awareness. I think that we need to make these people actually people to the community, have names, get to know them, and then we can all work together in helping on top of the coalition. So I think that, giving these people faces and them not just being considered a homeless or a problem, I think that's really going to help, is the community awareness. Thank you.
Mr. Ryan.
The homeless breaks down into three major categories. You have those who have disabilities or mental health issues, and that's where we need to lobby our county to strengthen our MHMR department. And then you have those who are chronically homeless. They don't want to be in a home. That's the way they want to live. And then the third segment is by situation. They've lost their job. And our community has come together, and Wheeler House has been a success in helping in transitional housing. I'm on the Serve Denton board. But we need to look as a city at our codes. Many years ago, we passed ordinances, or we passed the development code that does not allow manufactured housing. And so we need to come together as a city and discuss whether or not that's something we want to bring back into our community, because it's the most affordable housing possible out there.
Mr. Hodgepith.
I think there are a lot of individual supports that could be better pulled together. For example, in Leadership Denton, we met with Presbyterian Hospital, and they have a program where they'll identify people that are not regularly taking their meds or most chronic users of their emergency room, and they assign them a case manager and walk them through regularly receiving their medications, which allows them to thrive. So I think we need a better chartered plan, because there are growing tensions between the business community. The bathrooms are locked because of the homeless, but then that means that the citizens can't use them. When I'm block walking, I'm talking to people that are frustrated by that. So I think it boils down to having a conversation and then developing a plan that we can then disseminate and tell people kind of which direction we're going. Thank you.
Mrs. Hawes.
Okay. In 2014, I resided at the Salvation Army Denton. I was afforded their services and referred to others that could help me when they weren't available at the Sally. Denton's charitable heart was instrumental in my restoration. The homeless assistance agencies provide caring, professional services to those who are otherwise neglected or ignored. And I speak from personal experience. You become invisible. The task force, from the report that I read, created a position that serves as liaison between Denton City Council and the various agencies, and they're paid by the United Way. The task force was created in order to minimize the locking of bathrooms and to further disenfranchise the homeless. Like he says, there are some chronic homeless people that are professionals.
Thank you.
I wasn't one of them.
We are starting this time with Jason. District 3 is being inundated with developers wanting to erect multi-story SROs, and that's single-room occupancy. To alleviate the burden from UNT, what is your description, what is your position on SROs, not regular apartments, the single-room occupancy being erected in the historic areas of Denton?
I'm definitely against them, especially that one on Normal and Bryan. I'm glad it's not going to happen. You know, it needs to, our neighborhood integrity needs to be taken care of, and you can't do it with these big old 10-story monstrosities that it's just the parking that would be involved in that. It would clog up everything. I think things need to be proportional, and that was not at all. That was overkill, and I do not support them, and I'm glad that failed.
Mr. Duff.
Yeah, that one did fail. It was turned down by the Planning and Zoning Committee, but the vote was 4-3 for it. They had to have a supermajority for it to pass. I went over and took a look at that on, Normal and their homes across the street. I mean, there's no way that I would allow a 5-story building to go in there, and you got the traffic, and there's not enough parking. It's just, that's just not something I'm going to let happen. One suggestion that I would have is, UNT owns that old football stadium. How about tearing that thing down? That would be a great place to put a bunch of SROs, and it would totally be away from everything. I have no idea what they're planning on doing with that old stadium, but that would be one very good use.
Mr. Meltzer.
If you go to allinforpaul.com, you can see me speaking at numerous meetings all along the way about that particular project, and you can judge for yourself, how effective I am in that situation. My proposal in that area is to realize that, first of all, we have opposing goals. It's not totally crazy to think that we need denser infill near UNT. But on the other hand, we want to preserve historic neighborhoods. So, to me, the key is not to look at all the area around UNT as identical. I favor lifting the zoning caps on the area west of UNT, commonly known as Cement City, and allow that to become fully urban with first floor retail and parking structures and green space, and be much more judicious with infill in the areas adjacent to historic areas to be appropriate in scale and architectural style.
Ms. Service.
I think there's a time and a place for everything. I'm not necessarily against an SRO as a whole. A 5-story SRO, I don't think that has a place anywhere near downtown historic or anywhere anybody who's got a house there that's been there for a very long time. It's going to block their sunlight. That's not the place that it deserves. I did grow up with some people who loved SROs, and I did grow up with some people who didn't like them. The one I'm familiar with was 2 stories, and it was a bit more of a community. I think the higher up you go, the more of a disconnect between the citizens there is in the SRO. So, thank you.
Mr. Ryan.
Much of the problem with that particular SRO was in 2003 when the Denton Development Code was put into place. They went through and looked at what was in that area at the time and what zoning would match. And they didn't look at the fact that they were actually going to be allowing future use that would be completely different, that the zoning that they applied to that area shouldn't have ever been applied to begin with. It should have been applied to match the rest of the neighborhood at the time and just allow what's called non-conforming use for what was there. I encourage neighborhoods to do small area plans. That helps them immensely. Denia neighborhood has one. There's the Fry Street small area plan. Those let the people decide what they want to have happen with their neighborhood in the future. I think SROs have a place much closer to the campus, possibly on the other side of 35 down off of Oak Street.
Mr. Hudspeth.
I'm uniquely qualified in this position, and I represent that I'm uniquely qualified to fill this council position because I've decided these issues currently. So others on this panel will tell you what they think they will do. I have a clear record, and if you go to the Planning and Zoning Commission website and look at the archives, it's videotaped that I voted twice for apartments on Fry Street away from the neighborhood, and I led the charge against that particular SRO in the neighborhood. And so I have a clear record, and the only one that's looked at all the backup and had to make a decision on those items to date. And so I think that sets me apart, and I think I would continue to protect neighborhoods and continue to allow for growth near UNT and in the appropriate areas. But I think it's vitally important that we have a transition from UNT to those neighborhoods and that someone's able to stand and clearly stop.
Thank you. Mrs. Hawes.
As long as it maintains the culture of the neighborhood, again, if you're trying to put one right in the middle of a historic area, it kind of, well, it can work. I mean, it's a question of tolerance. We all tolerate one another. You got a beautiful Victorian home, and then you have a beautiful 5-story apartment complex with parking underneath. So everybody's happy. But everybody isn't happy because you have small businesses around the corner. I find that Fry Street and Hickory, that whole area right there, I miss the old Fry Street where it all used to be, but it has got a tremendous facelift since I've lived here. Let's just say that. It's not as ratty looking, so it's got historic and it's new at the same time. So you have, it's got a fresh feeling to it. So I wouldn't support the entire historic area being
While we are facing imminent growth in Denton, I think that we need to face that growth by trying to preserve and instill as many green spaces as we can. I'm not sure that we have enough green space around UNT where we have people that can use their bikes. They have strong walkability. They are able to get around Bernard, Welch, all of these areas late at night. That are well lit. I want to concentrate on preserving the green areas and adding more green areas of UNT instead of single room occupancy 5-story apartment buildings. We have the poorest air quality in Denton in the state of Texas, and I think that how we can help assuage some of that is to add more green space instead of high-rise apartment complexes.
All right, Mr. Duff. What do you believe is the best thing that you can do through your efforts if elected to the city council?
Oh, that can kind of cover a lot of things. I think the Denton planning and zoning and affordable housing, I mean, that's something that needs to be addressed. The City Council is going to act independently on regarding affordable housing. The Denton municipal utilities, they're getting a balance of energy. They're wanting to get to 70% renewables, and you've got the gas-fired generators that, you know, the beauty of those things, they can be fired up in 5 minutes, and we'll have that, you know, they can get enough power from Texas, but the problem is when it gets really hot and everybody's running at capacity, it gets very expensive. But now, well, that was short.
Mr. Meltzer.
I think you really have to look for an attitude or a point of view and a set of values, rather than one particular action. So, my orientation would be toward a smart growth approach that starts with what we value about Denton, so that as we grow, we become better, not just bigger. And lots of things are attached to that idea. That includes looking after our air quality so that we continue to be an attractive place to come to. It includes nurturing the things that make Denton distinctive as far as arts and distinctive retail, not just trying to become the next Frisco. There's already a Frisco. So I think look for an approach, I would say, rather than one particular legislative item.
Mrs. Service.
Two things in particular that I'm already working on and finding out how to come to a conclusion with are there's no public transportation between McMath and Denia, and there is no safety crossings and no sidewalks for the kids to cross. And there's already been several accidents. Also, I will work on getting a third party to come and regulate our gas wells. I'm also for the minimum of 1,500 feet setback, and I will work closely on getting those gas wells regulated between bi or tri-yearly. Thank you.
Mr. Ryan.
Thank you. I have a proven track record of being on council, being open, having town hall meetings, of digging deep into the mass of paperwork that is handed to council minimum twice a month, usually a little bit more than that, and finding all the mays and shalls and ands and ors and figuring out if it's the proper wording, running through the numbers to make sure that it matches up. Through my town halls and through digging through the numbers, that the citizens of Denton didn't get stuck with a $30 million bond to build the convention center, that it became a public or privately owned instead of a private-public partnership. There are incentives that we're going to be given, but that $30 million is not on the taxpayers' hook anymore. So Again, I'm extremely analytical in looking at both numbers and words.
Mr. Hudspeth.
First, I'm going to add a strong level of transparency. I think that's key in communicating back to the citizens, empowering the citizens, understanding that it is your tax dollars and you deserve better treatment than what you've received thus far. And so that's going to be one of the key changes. It's going to be real change also. There'll be 3 new council members, and Councilmember Briggs will be coming back, and so there's going to be a cohesive unit and an opportunity to make that change faster. Then I'm going to take a look at the spending. If you'll note, there's $48 million in unspent bond revenue for streets. That's 3 years old, so it's lost a lot of value. And the city notes that in 2014, 2015, they spent $200,000 on a splash park at Carl Jean Park, but there's nothing but grass there. So there's some real questions that I'll generate real answers for the citizens because you deserve it. Thank you.
Mrs. Hawes.
I plan on being accountable to you and only you. Our district is a big revenue stream for the whole city. District 1 is both historic, it's both part of the growth of the city, but it's also part of the heart of the city. And I plan on being part of the restoration of that. Any ethical or financial or fiscal responsibility attached to previous council members, I'll hold them accountable. I will tell you the truth, period.
Mrs. White.
I would like to continue the work that I've been doing in my community if I'm elected to City Council. I'm a 5-year volunteer for the Denton Community Market. I'm very proud of the work that we've been doing there. We have raised the visibility to the point that we have small businesses who are able to make a living wage by having their participation at the Denton Community Market. Also, as an 11-year educator with North Central Texas College, I have been a board member and am currently a board member and teacher for the Cohen School. I have assisted them getting a permanent home, which is 6441 Fish Trap Road. Also, I'm a current supporter and volunteer for GOAL, Guys Operating as Leaders and Girls Operating as Leaders. I would like to continue that work with Chris Ice to make sure that our students are not dropping out and our students who are not DACA certified are able to stay in our schools, regardless of any type of unfair or unreasonable immigration laws.
Mr. J.
The best thing I could do if I was elected to City Council would be to help shepherd in the next generation of entrepreneurs. Having been a small business owner here and with 10 other locations, Denton's a very, very hard place to start a business. It's excruciatingly painful. Out of the 10 locations we had, Denton was the most difficult to deal with. And I believe I can take a best practices approach to take the best out of each municipality we had a business in and compare it and seeing how we can improve the experience in Denton, because our permit times are so long compared to these other municipalities of our size. And we keep moving the certificate of occupancy time. We'll give them the time, oh, you're going to get your CO tomorrow. And then when the meeting comes tomorrow, they move it, oh, no, sorry, you need to do this. And that costs money. These people are putting everything they have on the line.
Thank you. Mr. Meltzer. Oh.
Ready for your question. Fire away.
I have it here. Proposition 1 proposes a tax freeze or giveaway. If it passes, how would you make up the loss of revenue estimated at $200,000 the first year to $2.6 million in 2026?
Well, it's unfortunately not only Proposition 1 that might come to bear on us. There's movements afoot in Austin to also restrict the ability of the city to govern taxation. So we may well be facing tighter budgets beyond even what that's what is suggested in what you just heard. My background is 30 years in private sector, 12 years as a vice president or senior vice president. I've been through the ordeal that nobody enjoys of restructuring, but it's essential to stay efficient. I think what we need to do is find ways to deliver services efficiently by looking into administrative overheads. We'd start with a span of control audit, so you see that somebody who might have a very important position with a big salary who's managing 2 people, they might be able to manage 4, and so on. But the key is to keep the funds where it touches the citizens, where it's reflected in community policing, et cetera.
Mrs. Service.
I just feel like I have many questions for it. I don't feel it's complete. I feel like it doesn't help all seniors or all those with disabilities, and I feel like the burden will be passed to younger people and other generations and who are already burdened with a lot of debt. If we take away more money from the city, we have less money for roads, less money for infrastructure, less money for education, et cetera. So, thank you.
Mr. Ryan.
In the event that it does pass, during the first year, it won't be that bad. You're looking at a couple $100,000 that is easily worked out of the budget. But when you look at the projections that they have for 10 years down the road, you're looking at a $2.5 million shortfall, and that's based on a 2% average annual increase in the value of your home. I don't know about anybody else out there, but if your house has only gone up by 2% a year over the last several years, you live someplace outside of Denton, that's for sure. So we're probably looking at a shortfall long-term, over 10 years, of closer to $7 million. And that's using about a 5%, which is about what we have seen over the last several years. So it's going to take some sharpening of pencils. It's going to take some looking through every number carefully in order to keep the budget on track for many years to come.
Mr. Hudspeth.
I think I would start by and continue to use that time. So everyone talks about an initial time and then it kind of ramps up. During that time, what are we doing? Are we spending wisely? Are we setting aside in advance? And I think that's one of the key focuses, is starting this year with focusing on streets, roads, infrastructure, spending regularly, chipping away at things so that we don't have this mountain of repairs that we need to be done all at once or waiting on a bond election. I think we need to readdress city council's focus away from things that don't meet our core responsibilities, being infrastructure, being police, fire, safety, that sort of thing. And I think one example I'll give you is on Bonnie Bray. Razor Ranch is getting ready to build a road, and then the city is going to tear out that road when they widen Bonnie Bray. So those things we can plan in advance and save that money, partner with development, and benefit the citizens.
Mrs. Hawes.
What was the question again? Sorry.
Proposition 1 proposes a tax freeze or giveaway. If it passes, how would you make up the loss of revenue estimated at $200,000 for the first year to $2.6 million in 2026?
Okay. As it's written, it's very vague. So it doesn't, I think as it's written, it could possibly pass because it's so vague. But the reality is, if it passes, again, you will have the minimal impact on the first year, and then, of course, the exorbitant amount will come in as the years go on. I think let's see, yeah, the 2.6 million, I mean, it's nothing. I mean, literally, we have a $100 million budget, so even at $7 million, it's not going to be unrealistic. As I was speaking with someone this weekend, and we were talking about putting an initiative in for a state tax. That would eliminate a lot of this. Texas doesn't have one. So your money is just going to Austin, hoping that they'll be able to give it back to the municipalities.
Mrs. White.
I am concerned if the tax freeze passes. We really need our money for our libraries, our parks, our sidewalks, our lights. So I would like to look and see if it passes, what is happening in other cities with this kind of budget, and how are they addressing the issue? I want to see how we can, through our Parks and Rec program and through the City of Denton, qualify for grants that will help us maintain our libraries and roads as we kind of counterbalance this loss that we have from our budget.
Mr. Jason,
To deal with loss in revenue, one thing we can do is definitely look at the spending side of the ledger, but as any business owner knows, you cannot save and cut yourself to prosperity or profitability. There are two ways to increase revenue. You can increase fees and taxes, which I'm not going to do, or you can increase economic activity. That's the most organic, non-invasive way to increase revenue. And all Denton has to do is get out of its way. We got so much great brain power here. We have stymied so many businesses have either left or never opened because they couldn't deal with the city of Denton. And if we just, we know increased economic activity increases revenue. And that's the best way to deal with budget shortfalls.
Mr. Duff.
Yeah, that's going to be a big shortfall of 200,000 to 400,000. You know, out of a budget of 114 million, that's like 0.2 to 0.4% of the budget. I can tell you, everybody up here can be against this thing. It's going to pass anyway. But, you know, for me, I'm going to focus on the other 99.6% of the budget. When we took the signatures for this tax freeze, 98% of the people we presented that to signed it. There were over 8,600 people, over 11.3% of the voting people in Denton that signed that thing. And you know, they're gonna vote. There's a lot of those people that are gonna vote for it. I can go through a bunch of other things of where the money's coming from, but this is a nothing burger.
All right, that concludes the question portion of this debate. I would now give you a minute to offer your closing statements. This is an opportunity for you to add whatever you would like to for the audience to hear. So we started down here. We will start with Ms. Service.
I'm Amanda Service. I'm District 4 candidate. You can find all my stuff on www.aheartforservice.com. You're probably wondering what a beauty salon owner has to do with city council. Well, it's everything. My salon is multicultural, bilingual. We do all hair types. We cater to anyone, no matter who you are. We do not discriminate. I talk to all walks of life of people. I talk to citizens all day. And so what better way to have somebody on here who can communicate with you than someone who knows how to communicate with everyone. So I hope I have your vote May 6th. Thank you so much, League of Women Voters. Thank you, citizens of Denton. This has been a really awesome opportunity, and I hope to have y'all's votes on May 6th. Thank you.
Mr. Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you again to everyone for coming out tonight. My website is ryanfordenton.com. You can check that out if you'd like. And one of the bigger issues that we didn't discuss tonight that I have a concern on, and that is water conservation. And a few years ago, Wichita Falls was having to recycle their water and because of the drought situation. You know, we're fortunate that many years ago, some of our city leaders gathered together with other city leaders and the Corps of Engineers and put in Lake Ray Roberts, and that will get us to about 300,000, 250 to 300,000 that we will be fine with. But if we don't start putting in some conservation code into our regulations and allowing conservation, that's the problem. Is we're not allowing water conservation currently. We will be in trouble. I ask you for your vote.
Mr. Hudspeth.
Thank you. My name is Gerard Hudspeth, running for City Council District 1. You can find me on Facebook, and I have flyers out there. Please grab those. I'm going to try to go quick. One of the key things that I talk to people about is the tax burden on citizens. I'm going to reduce that. I'm going to put more money back in our citizens' pocket so that they can spend it locally on local businesses as they please and not with the city. I encourage you to not only ask me questions, challenge my thoughts, and there'll be measurable differences. And I want to impress upon you that action speaks louder than words. And I'm here standing before you saying I'm ready to take action, ready to actually change things and give citizens a vote, unlike when this current council heard 22 people speak against that, an issue on the SRO apartments, and they immediately, the person that represents District 1, upon the last person speaking, moved to pass it. So that's unacceptable.
Mrs. Hawes.
Hi, my name is Fran Hawes. I'm, I guess, new resident to Denton, but that doesn't make a difference. I'm asking for your vote because there needs to be somebody different representing you, and I am her. I'm honest. I try to keep it as simple as possible. I'm approachable. And I will never lie to you, unlike our president. I can be reached at Fran Hawes DCCD1 on Twitter and at Fran Hawes Denton on Facebook. Thank you.
Mrs. White.
Again, I'm Dr. Emily White. I'm running for City Council District 1. I am a 19-year resident of Denton. I've been an educator in Denton for 14 years. I've been a professor at NCTC for 11 years. I am a longtime volunteer of both small businesses and educational entities in Denton. I have lived in Denton as a waitress, bartender, as a hostess. I have worked in multiple restaurants. I have lived here as a student. I have lived here as now a working professional with health insurance. I have been fortunate to be in a position to give back to my community. I would like to continue to foster small businesses, our art scene. I would like to make sure that we get some bike lanes and some walkable Denton spaces, and we preserve our green space. I would love your vote. EmilyForEveryone.com. Thank you.
Mr. Jason Cole.
Thank y'all. I'm Jason Cole. I'm running for District 3. My website's coleforcouncil.com. And I've had the privilege of being born and raised in this place, and it's the best. Well, I call it a town. It's a city, but it's still a town to me. And I want my children to be able to raise their family and work and live in Denton as well. And because this is the greatest place on the face of the planet. And I know a lot of y'all agree with me. So I'm going to work to keep it that way.
Mr. Duff.
Well, I think these forums are really good, and you know, actually a small number of people, you know, get to listen to you. But frankly, you just don't get enough time to really tell you what my agenda is. I've got flyers out there that's 4 pages. If you really want to know what I'm about, take one of those and take a look at it. I'm coming on to this council with just a really big advantage. I think a lot of people here know Kathleen Wozni. I've spent many hours with her so far. She's moving to Austin, and she's a phone call away. So I'm going to go in knowing a great deal about a lot of different things. The other point I'd like to make about me, I can go through my business. I always get things done.
Mr. Meltzer.
If you know me from before tonight, it's most likely because we met doing some form of service activity. The time that I have spent in Denton has been largely dedicated to being committed to service. I've worked as a United Way volunteer, coaching, teaching ESL to parents of children in after-school programs. I've done taxes for low-income families, including in Spanish and in English. I'm presently the only active financial coach for low-income families in United Way. I serve on the board of the Thin Line Festival and was pleased to be able to lead the effort to draw sponsors together from across Denton to make it a free festival this year. if you feel you've heard values and constructive approaches from me tonight, please don't stop at agreeing. So few people vote in the local elections. It comes down to hundreds. If you've never voted in only voted in a national election, please vote this time.
Thank you.
In a local election.
That concludes our questions for the candidates tonight. We want to thank you very much for your participation and for offering yourselves as candidates for the City Council. You should know that early voting takes place April 24th through the 28th and May 1st and through May 2nd. The election is May the 6th. Also, this forum has been recorded and will air Tuesday the 25th, Thursday the 25th, Thursday the 27th at 8 p.m. and Saturday the 29th at 4 p.m. You may watch it on Spectrum TV on channel 191 and Frontier Television on channel 39. Thank you all for your presence.